Hi, everyone. Before going into the interview part of this podcast, I would like to discuss what corporate venturing means. So with corporate venturing, large companies develop, sponsor, or invest in startup companies from the earliest stages of formation to latter stages of growth. And they do so for the purpose of identifying emerging technologies to develop cutting-edge customer-driven solutions that can resist the effects of time. Corporate venturing has some similarities to what R&D is in many industries. In simple terms, startup companies are backed by corporations to yield new sources of growth and unfair advantage. The central point is that a startup company is evaluated and then funded by the corporate venture capital arm of the established business. This works well to shake off protocol and bureaucracy, which can weigh down innovation when a parent company gets involved in partnership and investment decisions. Corporate venturing also has some similarity to venture capital funding. VCs are experts at the money side of things, where they focus on the financial objectives, whereas a corporate venturing team draws expertise from finance too, but mostly from strategy and industry, with their fingers on the pulse of emerging trends, opportunities, and risks. And yes, we also know that potentially the two can benefit each other enormously when working in tandem. So what corporate venturing and the entrepreneur's journey means? The startup businesses I have accelerated over the years often ask me whether they should engage with a corporate venture capital unit at the early stage of their formation. I think the question is a little bit like asking how long is a piece of string. There will always be some great CVCs and less great CVCs units out there too. Young startups can benefit tremendously from accessing the distribution, assets, core capabilities, such as the global infrastructure of a large business. If those established companies have well-defined processes in place, they can facilitate the education of internal stakeholders and startup founders as well on how to promote their solutions and scale them, not only in one sector or one countries, but in multiple geographies while providing whilst getting access to effective mentorship. They can also find a paved path to market and growth through such mechanism. Industries such as insurance, dominated by large players, this is especially important. Let's be clear, 80% of startups fail. B2B engagement, regardless of industry, can be a long and strenuous process at times. And it often takes 7 to 10 years for investments to yield returns. So it is not a bad idea to consider established players as one of the custodians of a startup's growth journey, as they have the time, the patience, and capital needed to wait for success to yield. Indeed, engagement, collaboration, and investment activities are not just about the grand entrance as an investable business. With corporate venturing, there is also a clear and effective exit for both the entrepreneur and the investor. In reality, where many startups fail, corporate venturing can enable the drive, the autonomy, and the energy needed to, at each stages of the startup phases, to flourish with the security and backing of a stable corporation. So why is there an increased drive towards corporate venturing today? Over the last few decades, corporate venturing has gained ground in terms of importance, interest, and strength. And think about Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Google, Intel Capital, or Microsoft. They would not have succeeded in the early days if it was not for the capital, resources, and coaching that came from their venture capital arms. For instance, in 2019, large players worldwide took part in 3,237 corporate venture capital deals, a record-breaking amount compared to 2011, where less than 1,000 CVC deals took place. Let's take a look at some figures from pre-pandemic times as well. So based on what I found, back in 2010, there were less than 20 recognized unicorns in the United States. By 2020, that was topping 200 in monetary terms. Then global venture capital was estimated at around $50 billion in 2010. By the end of 2019, that figure represented $295 billion. If you read my recent publication on the top 23 insurtech unicorns, and you'll find it on LinkedIn, there are today over 850 unicorns worth $2.4 trillion. On average, 30 to 40 new unicorns have come to market in 2021 per month. And as mentioned earlier, it takes on average 7 to 10 years to create a unicorn startup. So there is work to be done. The average round before reaching unicorn status is between $150 million to $250 million for any startups. InsurTech, which is an area where I'm working, so tech companies wanting to serve the insurance sector, is a new sector that represents around 10% of the fintech investment. $50 billion have been invested in insurtech since 2015. $13 billion were invested so far in insurtech in 2021, and this is as October 2021. This represents twice the amount invested in the sector in 2020. So there's a lot done, and there's a lot to be done. And so the question I want to ask now is, so why is it so important right now? There are market trends that are driving more interest in corporate venturing in general and tech-focused startups in particular, and particularly in my industry, which is insurance. Sustainability and climate change being one. The appearance emerging risk, like the recent pandemic, a required change and the ability to build strategy and operational resilience to enable business to grow for the long term. Since the pandemic, we have seen an uptick in the above trends. For instance, we were already seeing a huge movement in health and wellness, which has simply gained more fuel in the pandemic times. Pandemic create emerging risk. Pandemic also create a perfect storm for innovation and the identification of tech ventures that can cut time and effort to drive competitive advantage. So my next question would be, what are the best strategies that we need to consider to deploy if we are going to look at corporate venturing programs in a much more strategic and much more permanent way? So when it comes to corporate venturing, there are two main pillars to consider. Whether you are going to scout for ventures, so identify and nurture startups that are aligned to major problems of your headquarters. The outcome thought here may mostly be partnership and collaboration, but also long-term investment opportunities. The second pillar would be around building ventures or creating and designing new customer value proposition and disruptive business models able to solve some of the most complex challenges that are out there. Central to any decision is to understand the benefit that will come to the corporate entity by making the investment. We can look at this in terms of two overriding metrics. So the first one is called strategic returns. So will the corporate venturing opportunity increase the sales and profit of the corporation? So what are the synergies that exist? If returns may seem low on paper, could they bring higher returns elsewhere in the business? Financial returns. So using the on the ground and insider knowledge of the industry and market, how will a corporation fare better than private VC investors? The ability to be more patient alongside superior knowledge can drive strong balance sheets and can become game-changing. During our recent CVC research, we discovered that while the majority of corporate venture capital funds adhere to strategic investment thesis, a great number of corporate investors are also increasingly focused on financial returns. And this is attributable to a number of reasons. Investors learn where, when, how, and why to invest as the number of investments grow. As previously noted, 80% of enterprises fail, so they need to be careful. Investors also recognize where there are strategic values and where they are likely to have financial returns, as the learning insight involve success and failures. And when you look at the SQ, they won't result in 2 to 5 years, actually. While 5 years is often too short a time to determine whether or not a CVC is successful, investors learn that strategic investment means aligning with headquarters, which slow down the execution of the deals often. As a result, most venture capital teams turn to purely financial investment over time, as they don't need to be strategic anymore based on headquarters requirement for speed of result. Keep on listening. In my next podcast, I will introduce the 4 types of investment and who are the winners of corporate venturing. If you like this podcast, subscribe now, share with your friends, and if you enjoyed it, please give it a 5-star review. Also, if you want to cover any specific subject with me, contact me on Instagram under Sabine VdL Officials or LinkedIn under Sabine VdL. Thank you.